One of Sartre's fundamental claims within existentialism is that existence precedes essence. This is to say that meaning and purpose of one's existence is not predetermined and that no one is given any form of essence when thrown into existence. This, on the contrary, is a doctrine of thought that contradicts all preceding beliefs within the history of philosophy, from Plato's forms to Aristotle and Kant's conception of human nature. In Sartre's short, written piece, Existentialism is a Humanism, Sartre defends the philosophy of existentialism by laying out its fundamental concepts and how it is essentially a humanistic endeavour that acknowledges the a priori responsibility, anguish, abandonment, and pure human reality that is condemned onto the sovereign individual. Early on in the book, Sartre uses analogy to outline the necessity for an a priori conception before any object can be made and placed into the world. For what is fundamental for any craftsman is that the object that is to be made needs to serve and fulfill a definite purpose, therefore making the object determined. This gives that specific object what is called essence, a fundamental purpose and concept that was formulated by its creator before it was placed into the world. The concept must always be formulated before it is made into existed reality. Now, as we can see, all objects in the existing world that are created by any craftsman have an essence that precedes its existence. But what about man and humankind? Is it the same for us as well? Sartre writes, "When we think of God the Creator, we usually conceive of him as a superlative artisan. Whatever doctrine we may be considering, say Descartes or Leibniz, we always agree that the will more or less follows understanding, or at the very least accompanies it, so that when God creates, he knows exactly what he is creating. Thus the concept of man in the mind of God is comparable to the concept of the paper knife in the mind of the manufacturer. God produces man following certain techniques and a conception, just as the craftsman, following a definition and a technique, produces a paper knife. Thus each individual man is a realization of a certain concept within the divine intelligence." But what exactly is this concept of man that gives individuals this essence before existence, on a shared universal scale? Sartre explains that the philosophers of the 18th century, such as Kant or Voltaire, believed man possessed what is called human nature, which is the concept of that which is human, which is found in all individuals. That each man and woman holds within them a particular example of this universal concept of human nature. But Sartre writes, "Here again, the essence of man precedes his historically primitive existence in nature, thus alluding to the existential fact that man is nothing other than what he wills himself to be." According to Sartre, the primary reason for your existential angst is because there is no a priori conception or purpose for your existence. It is simply due to this reason why Sartre adopts and develops the philosophy of atheistic existentialism. As he writes, "If God does not exist, there is at least one being in whom existence precedes essence, a being whose existence comes before essence, a being who exists before he can be defined by any concept of it. That being is man, or as Heidegger put it, the human reality. Man first exists, he materializes in the world, encounters himself, and only afterward defines himself. If man as existentialist conceive of him cannot be defined, it is because to begin with he is nothing. He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes of himself. Thus there is no human nature, since there is no God to conceive of it. Man is not only that which he conceived himself to be, but that which he wills himself to be. And since he conceived of himself only after he exists, just as he wills himself to be after being thrown into existence, man is nothing other than what he makes of himself. This is the first principle of existentialism. Therefore, human nature as a universal a priori concept used to explain all of man's purposes and outcomes and ultimate essence before existence is not real because the essence of all human existences are derived from the yearnings of the individual will alone. Human nature in this sense is not real because it is not a universal concept that gives essence to the human existence. As explained by Sartre, we are beings who come into existence before we can be defined by any concept of it. It is not human nature which causes you to become that which you are, but it is the will of the subjective entity that grants you the making of your existential essence. This turns Sartre towards atheism, because, in his view, if there is a being whereby existence precedes essence, then there is no God and no human nature of which God can conceive of or work from. What I find questionable about Sartre is his dismissal of human nature. If human nature is not real from his perspective, then what can be said when comparing his train of thought with one of today's most frightening and relevant realities, AI, a man-made phenomena which plays a detrimental influence on human nature itself? I say human nature because AI doesn't just conflict only with cultural conditioning, but fundamentally alters human modes of apprehension, which are objective and universal. If human nature is not within modes of human apprehension that are essential in the human mind, then what is artificial intelligence affecting exactly? It can't be the human condition alone, because the human condition is contingent. AI, as we will soon realise with great depth, that it affects and adapts the entire spectrum of consciousness, whereby it be cultural conditioning, the human condition, and human nature that is innate and within biological systems. Another problem I have with Sartre is his belief that genetics does not influence essence or give us our purpose. Epigenetics was not founded during Sartre's life, but I see it as a good example of existentialism in science. That choice from the subjective individual influences not only himself, but also humanity's future. If Sartre was around today, he would probably definitely look into this with great detail, as information on genetics in his lifetime was not as extensive and revealing during his time. Epigenetics, if you didn't know, is the study of organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of genetic code itself. This, in layman's terms, is that the genetic code and genes can be expressed differently throughout your lifetime depending on your environment and the way you act in that environment that you are in. These epigenetic changes don't stop with you, but these sequences can maintain themselves for generations to come. It is also a good argument for free will being against determinism, which is something Sartre also believed in strongly. With this being known, you can see the ever more revealing truths that modern genetic discoveries are revealing that paradoxically support Sartre, but also contradict his claims that genetics don't influence the essence we choose to bear. Sartre also says in his book the following: "Man finds himself in a complex social situation in which he himself is committed, and by his choices commits all mankind, and he cannot avoid choosing. Man is the future of man." This is absolutely true. If it means that whatever man may appear to be, there is a future waiting to be created, a virgin future, then the saying is true. What I find worrying in this entire philosophical quandary, let's say, is the term human nature itself. It is equally ambiguous in the same way Kant refers to reason or the reasoning individual in relation to metaphysics. To have the view that there is no human nature as a reason to be atheistic also doesn't exactly prove the non-existence of God. It is very easy to argue for or against a lofty term such as human nature, to craft different definitions to the term. It is nothing more than metaphysical speculation which is not exactly demonstrable. Using human nature, which I see as being under the banner of the metaphysically speculative, is not worthwhile in attempting to debunk the existence of God, as it is not demonstrable due to the elusivity of its meaning and varied definition. Essence in relation to purpose makes all good sense, but not human nature in my view. Nietzsche says that human nature is just a euphemism for inertia, that it is merely a word developed out of cultural conditioning, and that it describes what we are before we make something of ourselves. Nietzsche, being an atheist, doesn't claim that human nature is not real, therefore there is no God, but sees it as simply describing what we are before we make our stamp on the world. Sartre furthers his claims by saying that if existence precedes essence, then there are no excuses or justifications for anything. Why exactly? Because in his view, we can never explain our actions by reference to a given or immutable human nature. In other words, there is no determinism or determined values preceding our existence, but instead, man is free and freedom alone. Here Sartre is relating human nature to values and orders which we hold. He also further goes on to explain the quite controversial claim that existentialists do not believe in the power of passion because a passionate act is an excuse to compel man to commit a certain act. Opposing against this, Sartre merely sees the power of passion as an excuse and that man is only responsible for his own passion. If anything, I see cultural conditioning, which is predicated from all worthwhile past human actions, as a preferable term, but in my view there is and always has been a human nature in all of us. Well, at least on an objective biological level. All in all, the term human nature more or less is a newly defined definition in the 20th and 21st century, and if Sartre is trying to debunk the validity of a definition of human nature which contains the past religious undertones from the 18th century in relation to Kant and Voltaire, which he is, then it's all a bit of an outdated and pointless debate. But that doesn't mean his fundamental argument is futile. Existentialism is still very much a strong philosophy to this day, and one I highly respect. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to strawman the guy. I know what he means, in that there can't be a universal nature to humans because there is no a priori essence before existence. I just think his argument specifically against human nature is in itself predicated on a selective definition of the term in relation to religiosity. Therefore, I see it as him just playing word games with a term that can be easily stretched to validate a point while also not using it in its most definitive context, which is that of science and biology. Sartre does not refer to such ponderies about the condition, but instead of aiming attention towards cultural conditioning, he sets sight in writing about human conditions, saying, "Although it is impossible to find in every man a universal essence that could be said to comprise of human nature, there is nonetheless a universal human condition. It is no accident that today's thinkers are more likely to speak of the condition of man rather than of his nature. By condition they refer more or less clearly to all limitations that a priori defines man's fundamental situation in the universe. What he is referring to as human conditions are the necessities that reside in man's existence at all times, such as to be in the world, to live in it, to work in it, and eventually to die in it. God the Creator may not have given essence or purpose to sentient human beings, but it gave essence to plants, flowers, and to all the nature of many other things. Those all have a fundamental universal essence before existence and no freedom to choose. I don't know, the curse for no a priori essence and partly the reason for our existential angst is because we are sentient. You may see that as a curse or not, but ultimately the message of Sartre is that when it comes down to it, we supposedly have the freedom to choose our purpose and to develop our own essence, the existentialist position for free will. So in the comments, tell me if you are someone who believes in determinism or free will. Is everything determined, or are we the ones who have the freedom to choose fundamentally? That in itself is an entire topic for another video, but is a fundamental question for existentialism, which I would like to see a discussion in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you're feeling extra generous, you can donate a minimum of $2 towards my Patreon account. Links to my Patreon page will be in the description and comments section below. Thanks for watching.